I think one of the things that I really like about this whole exhibition, Callum, is that although ostensibly it's photography and painting, it's also just full of things. And I'm a museum person, and our job here in the Burns Museum is to try and make some sense of this very complex story that Burns' life and his work and everything it represents that's hidden in things. So I get really excited about this picture, because when you're standing away from it, it looks like, a fairly attractive but slightly unsettling, slightly dreamlike image of Burns. You get closer, you think maybe it's a collage, maybe it's some kind of montage type effect, and then you realise when you get here it's just full of things, and there's so many stories going on, and I'm quite fascinated to find out how you go about just choosing all these things to go in this picture. Can you talk through some of them?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with an idea, really, and the idea often just comes from a word or a little fragment or something I picked up, and in this instance it was just the word kept on coming to my mind of Burns country. This idea, you see these images, engravings, such as these types of things, there's a few of them around here, of a notion of a poet in the landscape, but the landscape around here, around this museum, Burns country. And it always stuck with me, and I've made so many images around Burns over the years. I thought, well, Burns country, and then of course I thought of Elvis country, and I began to think of the musical thing. And then I was looking at the National Burns, and I came across this head banner image of Burns, and I was looking at that thinking, that looks nothing like the Burns that I thought that I might recognise. And I thought that was kind of interesting, so I thought I'd lift that and I would do this kind of iconic image of Burns that probably wouldn't look anything like him, with all these wee knickknacks and gewgaws around this notion of this world of Burns, this idea of these little pieces of ephemera that we collect to memorialise Burns. And I wanted to make this image as a plate as well, so that would take it to that other aspect of Burns' material culture. So it really refers to the idea of material culture, and also picking on the native species, and then the kind of
some very exotic species. But there's a sort of, as well as exotic, it's erotic as well, isn't it? I mean, it's a very erotic image, that the courting birds right here with, I don't know, is this Highland Mary or somebody sitting on there?
With my hand-painted tartan.
Oh right, okay. So she wasn't Highland Mary to start off with. You've created that object as well.
Yes, and of course this book is made with wood collected on the banks of the River Doon.
Oh, it's like some Mocklin ware cover, isn't it?
Mocklin ware, yes.
Beautiful.
And one of the ideas I kind of had was at some point to make a Mocklin ware with a laser cutter, Mocklin ware images, which hasn't quite happened yet, but may happen in the future. So the reference to music, the reference to the country, the idea of country music, Burns' relationship to music, the idea of the native, the idea of the exotic, because Burns, to me, is all those things. A reference to Ossian and the bard, and some literal things, the idea of this plough, which is kind of cutting right into a book. So the idea of Burns just ploughing through language and throwing out behind him this great kind of these leftovers of words and language with this kind of mouse. So there is a certain homage to this place, to this museum within this picture, though it's only actually occurring to me now as I say it, the idea of Kenny Hunter's big mouse that's outside. You've got a plough there and there's words. So the sense of the country, Burns country, is here as well.
It's always fascinated me about this place, because most sort of landmarks that you go to have I suppose an intrinsic accepted reality, like Edinburgh Castle or Glencoe or whatever. But this place is slightly different, because pictures of Alloway and the Burns Monument and Brigadoon started appearing in these illustrations in the early 19th century. And they were imaginary landscapes even then. You get these quite weird pictures with Burns standing in front of the Burns Monument, which obviously he could never have done because he'd been dead for a long time before it was built. But like, and so people were coming here to be part of an imaginary countryside that's as populated with ghosts and characters from the poems and an imagined sort of Burns as it is. Well, it's probably more like Graceland than
Yes,
Glen
which a place that I've been, yes, and was fascinated by. But the thing about Burns country and Burns world is that it's not just here, it's everywhere. And it's not just Scotland, because it's a world of ideas, a world of political ideas of emancipation, ideas of fraternity, brotherhood, all those kind of, these are, the language is specific, the message is universal.
And there's some of that internationalism in this as well, isn't it? The different exotic species in with the...
Yes. Well, this isn't anything like a forest you might find around here.
It looks like a French post-impressionist forest or something.
When I was a kid, I was always taken with these big murals that people could put right along the entire living room wall, and you're kind of, one minute your house and some kind of wee part of Scotland, suddenly you're in the backdrop of this incredible imaginative landscape. Sometimes it was the Alps and Switzerland, or sometimes it was these highly imaginative landscapes. And I was always very taken with that, the idea of an interior and exterior world merging. So there is that sense as well, the interior and the exterior.
I think that's a great thing about Burns, isn't it? It just take every little thing, every little detail, whether it's landscape or objects. So, there's nothing that big in his poems, but all together, when you put them all together, you get these incredibly huge worlds of the imagination.
Well, that's right, and the detail. I mean, Burns picks up in the details, the kind of thing that happens. He turns over a mouse with his plough, and that becomes this incredibly famous poem, which is recited every year. How many times has that poem been recited? Incredible, just one little detail, And to me, that's what really made me want to do this exhibition here, was about those kind of these little details of Burns's life, which have such a huge repercussion on all of Scotland and all of humanity, which sounds very grand, but I think that is a marker of the great poet.
And of your subjects, I mean, you deal a lot with historical people. I mean, where does Burns rank in terms of the number of different times you've portrayed him as opposed to...
Well, more than any, really. I mean, the first time I made a portrait of Robert Burns, I didn't really think much about it, but it was incredibly popular. And it went on a book cover, and it just went everywhere, and it really touched the chord with people. I've made portraits of living people, I've made historical portraits, but only really when I came across Burns did I realised you can make an image that you could put in the consciousness of the nation quite quickly.
And do you think, will you be done with it now, or are you going to come back to him? Do you think
I don't think I'll ever be done with him, because I keep coming up with other scenarios for images that are related to Burns. So I don't think so. I'll try not, but I suspect I will make another Burns image.
It's reassuring for us to know you're going to keep coming back to him. That's kind of what we hope everybody does, but that's fantastic. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.